Hello, welcome to episode 6 of Retrieving Reason podcast. Our topic this week is the definition of reason. Finally, we get to the definition of reason, right? Last week, we discussed 3 arguments. Some things are clear to reason. The basic things are clear to reason. The basic things about God and man and good and evil are clear to reason. But what is reason? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Has anyone ever given you a definition of reason? A quick Google search of reason gives us the following, and let me know if this is what you think I'm talking about. A cause, explanation, or justification for an action or event. Is that giving us a definition of reason? Or is this a reason? Second one is the power of the mind to think, understand, and form judgments by a process of logic. Is that a definition of reason, or is that a definition of reasoning, what we do with reason? A third definition that I found is what is right, practical, or possible. Common sense. Is that a definition of reason, or is that something like practical rationality or the application of reasoning, what we do with it? And then another one I found is some people are equating reason with empirical evidence or science. So this seems, I don't know, is reason equivalent to science, or is science an application of reasoning again? A particular application, not always. Not all reasoning is science. All right, so these definitions that we get are rather vague. I saw another one that says something like abstract thinking is reason. I don't know, it still seems like reason is not the same as thinking. Those are different things. So we want to talk about reason in itself today. What is reason? The only place I've found a definition of reason in itself is from Professor Gangadine's one-page handout, Reason. This is the one I told you about. This is my favorite handout of all time. So in this handout, Professor Gangadine says that reason in itself is the laws of thought. So reason is the laws of thought in itself, okay? So let's think about this. The laws of thought. And I've mentioned these before, but now we can talk about what they are and think about possible objections people might have to the laws of thought. And the first law we'll talk about is the law of identity, which says that A is A. A thing is what it is. Pencil is pencil. Rock is rock. Human is human. Matter is matter. So when we identify a thing, we're naming what it is, and we distinguish it from what it is not. A and non-A. So that's the law of identity. The second is the law of non-contradiction. Something can't be both A and non-A in the same respect and at the same time. So it's not both a human and a non-human in the same respect and at the same time. It's not both matter and non-matter in the same respect and at the same time. It's not both true and non-true, false, in the same respect and at the same time. And then the third law is the law of excluded middle, which says that something is either A or it is non-A. It's either a rock or it's non-rock. It's either a human or it's non-human. Okay, so these are the laws of thought. We should probably talk about these laws a little bit. They're laws. Notice they're not, human constructs, although some people might say that. The laws are discovered, and they're discovered first by Aristotle. Well, he's the one that writes them down. He writes them down, interestingly, in his metaphysics, not in his logic. And we could talk a lot about this. I wrote about it in Retrieving Knowledge, about Aristotle's discussion of the laws of thought in the metaphysics, because he thought these laws were not just laws for thinking, but were laws of being. So some people are very uninterested in the laws of thought because they think, oh, well, these are just descriptive laws. They just, they don't give us any content. It's kind of just like useful for logic or maybe computer programming, but there's no content. But that's not true. Anytime we identify or distinguish a thing or a concept, we are using the laws of thought. Anytime we use a word, we're using the laws of thought. So next time we're going to talk about what we do with these laws. But first, they're laws, and they're discovered. They're discovered by Aristotle. And there are sometimes objections to these laws. Why? I don't know. I think people think that maybe we're prideful humans. We like to think we know stuff. If there's anything we could know, it's these laws. These are the most basic aspects of human thinking when we apply these laws. So they want to, I don't know, tear down human pride. Let's think about that. Is it prideful to be able to say, I know that A is A? This is the foundation for knowing anything. If we can doubt that A is A, then we can't really know anything. If anything is clear to reason, it's clear that A is A. A thing is what it is. And let's think about some objections people have had to these laws of thought. Some people think, these laws of thought are fallible, they're fallen, they're possibly, evolving, changing as we evolve and change. They're finite. This is like human reason. Doesn't apply to God or anything like that. Let's think through these. First of all, are the laws of thought laws for real? Are they human constructs? Did Aristotle, make these laws up and impose them on all of humanity after him? Nietzsche might think so. He thinks that reason or the laws of thought are a fiction that we invented and we forgot that we invented them. He would say that about all truth. So we invented them and we imposed them. The philosophers imposed them, not we. And then we forgot that we invented them. And we think, this is just the way the universe is. But think about that. Is that true? If the universe is the universe, then it is what it is. Try to think anything and its opposite at the same time. It is what it is and it's not what it is. That's nonsense. It's meaningless. So anytime we identify anything, we're using the laws of thought. We're using reason. Notice we're using reason. So reason is, what did I say? How about fallible? Are the laws of thought fallible? I'm not sure what that means. I think humans applying the laws of thought are fallible, but the laws themselves are not fallible. Just like the law of gravity on Earth is not fallible. So we have physical laws that operate pretty uniformly in ordinary circumstances. The laws of thought are even more reliable. They're going to operate uniformly always. So they're not fallible. Are they fallen? Is reason fallen? Some people say this. Reason's affected by the fall. Are the laws of thought affected by the fall, or is our use of reason, our application of the laws of thought affected by the fall? So they're not fallen. What about malfunction? Can reason malfunction? This is something I wrote about in Reason and Proper Function. It seems like some people want to say that our cognitive faculties can malfunction, but can reason, the laws of thought, malfunction? I argue that no, they can't. That doesn't make sense to say that reason can malfunction. The laws are laws. They don't malfunction. We might fail to apply them, and I call this non-function or maybe a mistaken use of reason, but it's not a malfunction of reason. What about saying the laws of thought are finite? Is that true? Let's think about that. If anything is eternal, and something must be eternal, we can argue that, then it is what it is eternally. So the laws of thought have an eternal aspect to them. Whatever is what it is. So if there's a God, then God is God. The laws of thought apply to the being of God. Ooh, that's a little scary though, right? Are we getting into, terrain that humans aren't meant to think about? No, think about this. If God exists and God is eternal, God can't both be eternal and not eternal in the same respect and at the same time, right? So the laws of thought apply to all being, including the being of God. What about the laws of thought are evolving? What would that even mean? So like A is A now, but it wasn't in the past, and it might not be in the future. Well, we can study the past. For example, we could study the works of Plato. And Plato uses words, and words express concepts, and concepts are an application of the law of identity. So if there's any meaning in any words we use, then the laws of thought are in play. If any being exists in the past, then it is what it is, and the laws of thought apply. So it doesn't make sense to say the laws of thought are evolving. We could even say if something is evolving, it is what it is, right? So now let's think about the laws themselves and think about objections that people might have to the specific laws. I'm not sure I've heard an objection to the law of identity as much as to the law of non-contradiction and the law of excluded middle. Non-contradiction, I've heard... So this one's saying something's not both A and non-A in the same respect and at the same time. So that in the same respect and at the same time is added because we might have something that's A now and non-A later, but that's at a different time. So an example my students sometimes bring up is a caterpillar is a butterfly. A is non-A. Yeah, but it's a caterpillar at time 1 and butterfly at another time 2. And so we could take into consideration process and change over time. Whatever a being is at any given moment, it is what it is at that moment, and it's not what it is and not what it is at that moment. Maybe it's at a different moment. I've heard objections or, attempts at objections to excluded middle. That something is either A or non-A. And the big one I've heard is that this is binary thinking and things aren't just black and white. Things are, there's shades of gray, particularly in ethical issues. So this is just too black and white. Is that true though? Let's say A is black, then what would non-A be? Non-black. It's not white. It's anything that's not black. So you could take account of every shade of gray that you want. It is what it is, and it's either what it is, gray 2, and it's not gray 3. It's either gray 2 or it's not gray 2, okay? So we could look at every shade of gray and say it is what it is, and either it is what it is or it's not what it is. So binary thinking, I have come to suspect, is something else. Binary thinking is when we have... two contraries, like all or nothing, or antinomies. And there is a third option we haven't considered. So let's not get, stuck with binary thinking as an objection to reason, because it's not. It's not an objection. All right. Some other things that we might want to think about, contrast reason with are non-reason. So if reason is the laws of thought, some things are going by the name of reason that aren't actually reason. And I've made a list of some things here. Experience. So some people claim that science is reason. And this is true of Richard Dawkins. He's going around making claims about reason, that it's science. And they have this reason rally that they have in Washington, D.C. sometimes. So science equals reason. No, that's experience, and it's either external experience, like our knowledge is through senses, or internal experience. Sometimes people claim to have an experience of, something divine, a mystical experience. So that's not reason. Those are experiences, and we're going to find out that experiences aren't meaningful unless we interpret them, and we interpret them in light of our basic beliefs using reason. So you can't have an experience that is meaningful without using the laws of thought to interpret that experience. All right, reason is not feelings. So we can have external feelings in our body or caused by our brain chemistry, or we can have internal feelings like emotions, but those aren't the same as reason. Those are non-reason. Reason is not the same as power. Power could be external power, like force, like brute force, or it could be internal, like our will. The will is what moves us, motivates us. It's the power to do something. But that's not the same as reason. That's non-reason. Reason is sometimes equated with practical rationality. I mentioned that earlier. This is or instrumental reason or pragmatism. This is about an application of reason. So this is reason applied to doing, or reason is a tool that we use, a logical tool. But that's not the same as reason in itself. Okay, that's an application of reason. And sometimes reason is contrasted with anti-reason. And anti-reason is that which is opposed to the laws of thought. And I would say that there are people that are anti-reason, and sometimes they glory in this. I think Nietzsche was anti-reason. He wanted to tear down the laws of thought and show that they are a construct. And I think some people that come after Nietzsche are anti-reason and they glory in it as well. Why would you glory in that? Maybe there's a defiance of reason and being in some people. This desire to eradicate what is identifiable and has a nature. Because then if something has a nature, then we have to talk about the origin of its nature, the origin of being. And perhaps that leads us to the question about God. Nietzsche has this famous quote, and I probably can't recall the whole thing properly, but it has to do with we're not rid of God yet because we still believe in grammar. And that quote is pointing out the relationship between reason expressed through words and an orderliness that points back to an origin of order in God. So some people maybe intuitively sense that if there are laws of thought that we didn't invent, we discovered, then there must have been an origin of these laws, and it can't be nature itself because these are not physical laws. And so the implication is that perhaps there's another thinker, an eternal mind that ordered things in this way. That's spooky stuff, right? So, there are philosophers who have noticed that too. I think Thomas Nagel in The Last Word, his book called The Last Word, notices this connection between reason, being, and that it leads to God. And he's like, I don't want the universe to be that way. I don't want there to be a God. And so he recoils from that implication rather than addressing it and saying, wow, yeah, maybe there is a God. And there are people who write papers, arguments for God from reason. I think C.S. Lewis did this, and some other, Victor Reppert has a paper like this. I once thought one up, but I decided to put it on the back burner. The argument for God from reason. Maybe I'll revive that one day and see if it still works. But yeah, there are some metaphysical implications about reason, the laws of thought, as the laws of being. So let's pull these threads together. Today we talked about a definition of reason. What is reason in itself? Well, we said reason in itself is the laws of thought. And we contrasted these laws of thought with what is non-reason. And we looked at some possible objections to the laws of thought, things that we've heard popularly. And we see these aren't real objections to the laws of thought. And so also we want to make a distinction between reason, the laws of thought, and reasoning, or reason in its use, and rationality, or reason in us. So reason in itself is the definition of reason. It's the laws of thought. And so next time, what we want to do is look at what we do with reason. We want to talk about reasoning versus non-reason. And this may take a couple episodes to cover because we do a lot of stuff with reason. This is also the part that's fallible. All right, so I'm going to pause here. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to joining you again soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.